Hi guys, it's Cindy from Part-Time Permies, and today we're gonna accomplish part 2 of preparing this coop for the winter. That involves clearing all the bedding out of this coop and putting it over here into the run. For those of you guys who saw the last video on this, we cleared all the halfway decomposed material off the top layer in here in the run, and we'll put it in the garden. So this is our chicken composting system. That is how we compost our winter chicken manure. So the next step, we'll be moving last year's chicken bedding into the run. It's got a good balance of nitrogen and carbon because you have the shavings, the wood shavings mixed in with the chicken manure. So chicken manure is considered green, wood shavings are considered brown. So good mix. And out here, a lot of this is still halfway to most of the way decomposed, basically compost at this point. So we have a good starter to start our decomposition of the rest of the material. Okay, for this part, all I need is a mask, a good shovel, and either some buckets or a cart. I still use my Gorilla cart. I did get that fixed last time, for those of you guys who watched. It did break and we jerry-rigged it back together. The Gorilla cart has lasted me 3.5 years, so it is a decent cart to use. I didn't need this mask for when I was working in the outer part because not quite as dusty. It's decomposed. It's pretty much almost all soil at this point, but inside it does get a little dustier because there's not it's not so wet in there, of course, so it's not decomposing as quickly. So this is the first year I've done deep litter in this coop, so I made some adjustments last fall to help winterize this coop and make it a little bit better for my chickens. You can check out that video, so I will link it up here if you want to see how I keep my chickens warm in the winter in Michigan, where we get down to like -15 at night sometimes without heating my coop. So anyway, we'll get started shoveling manure. Purpose for this bedding has multiple uses basically. One, obviously you need bedding when you keep chickens enclosed for a long period of time. In Michigan in winter, we could get more than a few inches of snow. We could get up to a few feet of snow, and chickens don't like walking in the snow. So by having a mostly covered run, having a coop indoors keeps them confined, so you need a way to trap, you know, all that manure and to keep everything clean. So we basically layer up the wood shavings all winter in the coop. That provides an insulation for them as well as a clean layer of bedding throughout the winter, so that they're basically, if they were in a dirty environment, the ammonia from their urine gets into the air and causes respiratory problems. So you can get more winter problems with that in an enclosed space. But by piling up the bedding on top of the manure, you don't get all that ammonia into the air. You're burying it. These are pine shavings, which is nice because it does have a nice smell to them as well. Although any wood would work. I probably wouldn't use cedar because I want this to break down. So I want the microorganisms to get into it. I don't mind if bugs get into it. If bugs get into it, chickens will eat them. Out here, it gives another layer again to catch manure. And I could spread fresh on top of what's out here, but it gives it an area where it could get damp and start breaking down a little faster than it would in the coop. And that breaking down process also creates heat, so that it does keep the area a little bit warmer. It's basically a big compost pile. And then of course, once it's broken down completely into compost, we can move it from here into our garden. Now since we only use this coop for the most part in the winter, It gives us a whole season to break down if we want to move it from this run to the garden at that point. So it's not overly hot. You can't put chicken manure straight on the garden unless you have a whole lot of carbon material to balance it out. And you do have to watch for things like salmonella and other toxins in the chicken manure. This way it gives everything a time to break down and settle, so it's not going to cause as much problem for growing in it. So multiple uses: bedding, warmth, clean air, as well as clean environment in general, and compost for the garden. So very permaculture. Other reason why it's good to move it from in the coop to out here, other than the coop's not as wet as it is out here, so it doesn't break down as fast, is this gives an opportunity to turn it as you move it. So you only have to turn it once. It'll stay out here for a whole winter season. It'll start breaking down, so you can pile it up fairly high because it will break down through the season. And then in the spring it's ready to go in the garden. Or if you want it to break down a little further, you just leave it for the summer. I move my chickens into their chicken tractor for the summer and let this break down even further and move it into the garden in the fall, which lets us build the soil pretty darn quickly in our garden. Okay, so Mike had a great idea. We had, as you can see what's left in the corner here, some decomposing particle board down in here, or composite board, that ran across the bottom of the coop inside the run all the way down to that corner. And instead of hauling all of this material out the door and in the other door and dumping it, we are able to push some of it, not all of it, but some of it underneath and out directly into the run. And then we'll hook our ramp back up later, but to basically that way you can see how deep that is. So that's about a foot there, and we go even deeper inside, which is why I have to take some of it with the cart, but that also enables me to move it throughout the run easier. But this actually will work nicer, make it easier to pull that material out. I'm not worried about animals getting in there because this is all locked up and enclosed, especially at night. So this is the run, the winter run for the chickens. And I'm not worried about extra draftiness because we will pile the material inside back up, and outside here it'll probably be piled up a bit too. Looks like a good solution for easier shifting and turning of this material. Okay guys, so a number of hours later, we do have a cleared out coop. So all of that basically filled up this entire run area with a decent depth, I'd say over 6 inches of bedding material. So that's a good start for the winter out here. Next we'll put some fresh bedding in here, and once we have the fresh bedding in there, we're good to move some chickens in. Now, I'm not going to move the main flock in yet. What I'm going to do is we have a set of, actually 3 sets of young hens, and so basically pullets and cockerels who we're raising for meat, and they're in 3 separate locations right now. But this way, if I move them in here for the next couple weeks just until we're ready to harvest, it'll keep them all together. Plus it's a lot easier to catch them when I close them up in this coop. So that will be at night, so we won't get that filmed. But one is that little mobile coop down there. There's 7 chickens in there. There are 5 in with these silkies, and then they're off free ranging. They're off free ranging right now, but we have 10 in this coop. So all of them will move into the big coop for the couple weeks, their last couple weeks, just to finish them off. So yeah, it's a lot of work to move all this bedding around and compost around. It would be nicer if this coop was right next to the garden. However, this coop came with our house, and the gardens were already set as well, so We did not plan that, but if you're planning on building a coop, I would suggest building, if you're building a stationary one, build it near the garden. We are able to use all this bedding in multiple ways, so we have nice rich soil in the end. So these were all the chicks from the summer, minus a couple that we'll be keeping, but these guys have a trip to the freezer in about a week. But for now, they are in our winter coop and run. Unfortunately, no longer free ranging, but I don't have a fence to keep them in place very easily. But they do get all the kitchen scraps, so they're happy. So we had moved all the bedding from in here over into that area so that we could start deep litter in here. So this isn't very deep yet, but we'll be adding layer upon layer as we need this cleaned. So far there's only just a little bit of mess from these guys, so we'll probably add a little bit to it, and then we'll just slowly add over the winter until it's full, and by the time it's full, it's spring, so it'll be time to let it sit. We can add some more out here to help out in the winter as well, because it does get dirty out there as well. But that way we go from here with fresh bedding, deep litter all winter. Next fall, that moves out here. That sits another year out here. And then it's breaking down. And then the following fall after that, it moves all the way over there to the garden. So that is our chicken compost system. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you do with your chicken bedding and your system. And we'll see you with our next video. Take care, guys.